Hey guys, Mike the Viking here, back for yet another Rust base tours video. First base, or bases we're going to be looking at, is FAI's compound. So this clan has decided to wall off this entire island. I don't think I've seen anybody wall off an entire island this big before. I would say this might be one of the biggest bases I've ever seen in like strictly material counts. I honestly don't really know how practical something like this is. Like, is it really, you know, that important to wall off the entire base? I have doubts. It's probably not necessary. I think the main reason you do it is just because it looks cool. Another issue they had was that this was an island that people would spawn at, so they had to put barricades wherever potential spawns were, which is quite an interesting issue. You know, I've never actually heard of someone going to this extent. And of course, they've actually gone to the trouble of grinding to level 75 to place down their very own windmill. Is there absolutely any purpose to this? No. But similar to probably the walls, it's just kind of like to show off. Now, something else that's interesting about this compound is they actually have two cave bases on this island. So they own both of them, which is quite an interesting advantage. Cave bases are known to be pretty much unraidable, honestly. I've never actually seen a cave base successfully raided. So, I mean, to have two of them is pretty darn awesome. Here's a look at the other cave base. You can see this one's probably a lot more built up. I would say this is probably the main cave base. They even have a pretty impressive defense tower here. Tons of windows. Pretty much ideal. That's what you would need. And then they have a sheet metal compound here as well. And then even over here, there's another little base, which again is to house loot. Now, of course, the advantage to having so many bases everywhere is that the raiders won't know where the loot is. So that's probably the biggest advantage to this whole island, is you don't know where anything is going to be. Next base we're taking a look at is Mike B's base. This is probably one of my favorite designs in a while. I haven't seen something like this. On the outside, he's got a bunch of squares, which are supposed to be looking like, you know, TC access. I think a couple of them do actually have TC access, but that's just to mess with raiders so they don't know which is which. And then on the inside of the wall, we've got 5 towers, all of course for base defense. Once you're in the compound, this is where I really like it. Most bases, once you're kind of inside, it's all walls and you don't see any sky, but we're still, of course, in his base. But this is kind of like a courtyard area. Usually, you either have foundations and ceilings and it's all claustrophobic, or you've got completely open courtyard with grass. You can tell that the whole thing's symmetrical and nicely balanced. You know, it doesn't have any random disorganized designs. This is clearly a thought-out base. Now, when you enter kind of the core of the base, you're greeted by an awful lot of doors, which I find kind of interesting. The neat thing about this design is he's managed to fit 5 or 6 large furnaces within his walls. The great thing about these ones is that they're totally walled off. You know, they aren't in the courtyard or whatever where you just take out a few walls. These things are totally safe. Nobody's getting to these without a serious amount of C4. Now, what you're going to notice is a ton of doors throughout this whole design, which once again just helps with raiding because you're not going to know where to go. Now you go up through one of the classic ladder hatch things, and guess what? You got a ton more doors. He told me that, you know, they're kind of just for show, most of these. In fact, I think almost all of them are empty. But then you go through a few ladder hatches, and you get to, you know, the real deal. You get to his 4 loot rooms, which are actually fairly standard in design. And then you're all the way up onto the core roof, which just has, yet again, a ton of doors. I'm not sure why they're wood at this point, but definitely some very unique aspects to this base. I like the furnaces actually being all closed off, and the fact that there's 6 of them is, of course, pretty cool. Okay guys, next base we're going to be showing off is Doom's base. Doom is an old friend of mine who recently got back into Rust, so I had to showcase his. But on top of that, it's actually a very interesting design. He was mentioning something about Anarchy's base design.
I was copying this base in the...
Okay guys, next base we're going to be showing off is Doom's base. Doom is an old friend of mine who recently got back into Rust, so I had to showcase his. But on top of that, it's actually a very interesting design. He was mentioning something about Anarchy's base design.
I was copying this base in the, like, Anarchy, if you know him. He's also a YouTuber in the Rust.
I don't remember anything from Anarchy, but it's possible it's his design. On the outside, this base looks fairly normal, just a circle base, no big deal. But this is a very interesting base on the inside. So you got a couple layers of doors, no big deal at all. And then you get to this massive open dome with nothing but 2 auto turrets, which will pretty much kill anything that enters here. So what does this mean on a rating perspective? I honestly don't know. Like, I guess you would have to just shoot out the ceilings. That's the only way you could rate this. The only way the owner can get up is just by placing ladders. Really though, I think you would have to collapse the space in order for it to go down and get any loot. But on top of that, what's interesting is that the loot is not in this center core. The loot is on these outer walls. You can see here's some loot here, and it is not in the core. Now you could say that's bad. I would say that's good, because the raiders are gonna probably assume, oh well, it's gotta be in the center. So they're gonna waste all of this explosives on empty rooms essentially, because there's absolutely nothing in this core. You could argue that it's kind of a decoy, this whole center thing, to look kind of fancy, but there's nothing here. Another thing that's very awesome about it is that he's got all these windows surrounding this thing, kind of like Colosseum or something crazy. So, you know, you can imagine the raiders down there, and Doom's just chilling up here with a 249 or something, just gutted him down. Okay guys, that's gonna be the end of the base tours this week. Definitely some pretty good ideas in here, maybe even for my own base designs. They look very cool. This was of course recorded on my Rust server. A quick overview, it's a 2x gather server with kits, TP, remove, pretty basic setup. If you want to join, there's info on how to do so in the description. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. Also follow me on Twitter. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video.